On the morning of Thursday, February 22, 2024, University of Georgia CCTV captures a strange individual dressed in all black roaming around at a bus stop. The timestamp shows it is 6:53 in the morning. Shortly after, he's seen hanging around a student apartment building, where it looks like he's attempting to gain access to one of the rooms. He's captured 48 minutes later, still lurking around the building, before he wanders off into the wooded area nearby and is never seen again. Little did anyone know that this interaction would soon bring legislative changes that would reach all the way to the White House. Hello and welcome to Worst Cases. At 9:05, a jogger is captured running past on a trail where she passes students waiting for a bus. This jogger would be 22-year-old Laken Riley. Running was a big part of her life, often going out on a morning jog with her roommate Connolly. Laken had recently transferred from the University of Georgia over to the nursing program at the Augusta Medical College. A caring soul, she would choose to aim her career toward becoming a pediatric nurse so she could help other people. Laken can be seen leaving her apartment near campus at 9:03 to go out for her run that morning. Only a few minutes later, she's captured running past the waiting students and then past other people on the trail. She had noise-canceling AirPods in and was listening to music as she ran. It was also common for her to call her mother and chat while out on a run. She would make a phone call while out on this run, but it wouldn't be to her mother.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. Hello, Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me?
There would be no answer on the other end of the line, with the sound of scuffling and a muffled voice the only thing that could be heard. Laken had run off the path along an area near a lake, where she had come to a sudden standstill. Only moments later, she had triggered the SOS function on her Garmin smartwatch, a gift she had received from her mother. This is what had dialed 911. Police dispatch would attempt to call her back, but their calls would be left unanswered. Laken's roommate Connolly had finished her morning classes when she would check her phone, and to her surprise, there would be several missed calls and messages. Lily, who was a roommate along with Laken and Connolly, had asked if she had heard from Laken that morning. Connolly would call her back saying she had been in classes all morning and hadn't spoken with her. She would check her voicemail and find one that had been left earlier from Laken's sister Lauren, who had voiced her concerns about not being able to reach Laken. They would then find out that AT&T had experienced a service outage that morning, which likely explained why they couldn't reach Laken. The momentary relief would be short-lived, however, as they soon realized that Laken's cell phone was not with AT&T. Lily would return to their house to check if Laken was there, and quickly realized she had never returned from her morning run. Thinking on her feet, she remembered she could use the shared location feature on her phone to locate her. She was able to locate her off the trail in the wooded area, and she hadn't moved for a couple of hours. By this time, Sophia, who was the fourth roommate living with them, had returned from an exam and decided to go with Lily to try to find her. Almost 2.5 hours after Laken was captured on camera jogging on the trail, Lily and Sophia would set out with their dog named Champ to try and locate her. Using their phones to try and pinpoint her location, they would take one of the trails toward where they thought she was. As they were walking, they discovered a white AirPod, which appeared to have been squished into the dirt, which looked to be exactly the same as the ones Laken wore while running. Lily and Sophia would call 911, fearing the worst.
Hi, we're calling because our roommate went out for a run at 9. She usually runs through Lake Herrick behind grad housing, and we haven't heard from her. And we all just got service back, so we don't think it has anything to do with the outage. We went to go look to where her last location was, and all we found was an AirPod.
Okay, have you tried calling her since she just got service back?
has AT&T, which was the one with the power outage, so they've had service the whole time, and her calls have been ringing through. We're just not getting answers.
What's your name?
My name's Sophia Madonna.
And what's your friend's name?
Her name's Laken Riley.
Authorities would be provided with this screen capture of Laken's phone location, and police would descend on the area. They would retrace the steps that Laken had taken along the path, and at 12:30, 3.5 hours after Laken was seen running along the path, they would make a tragic discovery.
To the university, I found it. Ma'am. Oh! I need EMS immediately to the location where the phone pings.
Laken's lifeless body would be located underneath a large tree. It appeared that whoever had done this had hastily tried to cover up her body with leaves and other garden debris. EMS would arrive and attempt to revive her, but sadly it was too late, and she would be pronounced dead at the scene.
Homicide investigation is underway at UGA.
There has not been a homicide in the last 20 years here on campus.
Until Thursday morning around lunch.
The University of Georgia Police Department received a call from an individual concerned for a friend who had gone jogging at the intramural fields.
Roughly 30 minutes later, the young woman's body was found in an area of Oconee Forest Park behind Lake Herrick. UGA Police, Athens Clark Police, and the GBI set up a command post, locking down the entire sports complex, checking every driver's ID and documenting every vehicle that left the complex. UGA's police chief confirming.
At this time, we do not have a suspect.
UGA has canceled classes on Friday, and the chief making sure everyone stays alert.
When you have a suspect that's on the loose, there's always a danger.
It was obvious she had sustained significant blunt force trauma to the head, particularly to the left side of her head. Laken would be discovered at the end of this trail. Rocks nearby to her body were found to have blood on them, which would later be confirmed to have come from Laken. It was assumed that these had been used as the murder weapon. Laken's cell phone would also be located some distance away from her body, partially buried in the leaves on the ground. If it wasn't for her friend's quick thinking in using the app to locate her phone, police likely would have never found it buried amongst the leaves. When the phone was forensically examined, a fingerprint was found which was not from Laken. This left thumbprint could be the key to unlocking the killer. An autopsy would be performed, and while blunt force trauma had certainly contributed to her death, it was also discovered that signs of asphyxiation were present. The brutal attacker had beaten her with a rock before strangling her to death. A truly horrific crime. Laken's smartwatch was analyzed, and it showed that she was on the trail for 4 minutes after she had stopped jogging. This is when the 911 call would be made to police from the SOS function on her smartwatch. Shortly after this, she had moved 60 feet into the woodlands. And whether it was a struggle or she was dragged to that location, we will never know. More data pulled from the smartwatch would indicate that her heart was still beating at 9:28 a.m., 17 minutes after she had stopped running on the trail. Sadly, only minutes later, the watch would also show that this was when she had passed away. Police who had found Laken's body had indicated that her top half was exposed, and it appeared as if it was an intended sexual assault. However, the attacker may have been disturbed because this had never happened. Police would start using drones to search the area and would stop traffic to ask if anybody had seen anything. They would leave no stone unturned in their search for evidence. A large blue bin located close to the crime scene was searched, and a blue jacket was found on top of the rubbish inside, appearing to have been thrown there recently. When the officers looked at the jacket, they noticed visible bloodstains and brown hair that had become entangled in the jacket's buttons. The blood on this jacket would be tested, along with the hair, and it was confirmed it belonged to Laken.
Oh, shit. Yeah. There's hair on the buttons, ripped up sleeves.
Police now had to find who had discarded this jacket. In a stroke of luck, an apartment's doorbell camera pointed directly at the bin, and the occupants were able to retrieve the recording. At 9:44 on the morning Laken was killed, and only 15 minutes after her heart had stopped beating, the camera would capture a man walking towards the blue bin. While he had his back to the camera, he was observed taking off his hat, which showed a distinctive logo, which was an Adidas logo. He would walk away from the bin and stop at a row of bushes where he was observed discarding more items. Police would visit the area and would find black disposable gloves, one with a tear on the left thumb, which had left a visible hole, and Laken's blood was observed on both gloves. The following day, almost 24 hours after Laken was seen jogging on the CCTV footage, police would make their next breakthrough. A man was seen sitting outside of the apartment complex where the gloves and jacket were located. And to their surprise, he was wearing an identical Adidas hat to the one seen in the footage. The man sitting in front of them was Diego Ibarra, who was living at the apartment complex. When officers asked for his ID, he would produce a fake green card. Diego lived with his two brothers Manny and Jose in the apartment, along with another female named Rose Flores. All of the residents in this apartment were living in the U.S. illegally and had lived off part-time jobs at local restaurants, allowing them to go undetected. Diego even managed to get a job in a food delivery at the University of Georgia. Jose Ibarra, also known as Victor, would be called out of the apartment by police.
Put the guy right here. Put the guy right here. Yeah, Hola. 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 Policia. Hey. Policia, manos.
He said he left them on those, so I'm going to try and cut it off.
Hey, I need you to translate one at a time. Come here. Come to me. Come here. Who are you? Tell him I need to see his hands. I need to see his hands. Tell him to slowly get out. Ask him to leave anybody else. That's a match right there. Right. Say it slowly.
Immediately, police would notice marks and cuts on his arms, hands, and back of his neck, which appeared to be defensive wounds. He tried to play it off, saying that the marks meant nothing and that they were not important.
What happened there? What happened there?
Officers asked him to lift his hair so they could look for marks, and he would gesture that he normally wore a hat. He would point at his brother and say he normally wore that hat, the exact match to the Adidas hat seen in the doorbell footage. A search warrant was obtained and black disposable gloves, matching those found discarded in the bushes, were located. The residents of the apartment would be interviewed at the police station and would confirm that Jose Ibarra was the man on the doorbell camera footage. They would also confirm he was wearing his brother's hat on the day that Laken was murdered. In an almost comical twist, images pulled from his cell phone on the same day as the murder showed selfies that Jose had taken of himself wearing the hat and the same clothes that were observed in the doorbell footage. He had deleted these images off his phone, but forgot he had posted them to Facebook. The hat and his clothing would later test positive for Laken's blood. Other doorbell cameras located in the apartment complex would capture Jose the night prior to the murder, wearing the same clothes and the Adidas hat. The morning of the murder, it was observed that he had now changed clothes and was discarding a further bag of items. This was only 50 minutes after Laken was killed, and after dumping the items, he would return to his apartment. Sadly, the dumpster was emptied only 45 minutes after he had dumped these items, so police were never able to recover the items. The shirt he can be seen wearing the night before and after the murder was never located, so it was assumed he had thrown that into the dumpster. The case being built against Jose was strong, and it would only get stronger when the forensic team would confirm that Jose's thumbprint was a match to the one found on Laken's phone. DNA extracted from underneath Laken's fingernails had also come back as a match for Jose Ibarra.
Behind me right now, you can see UGA police, the GBI, and Athens Clark police are still here on this scene, going through the suspect's apartment. As to what they have found so far, the police chief not telling us, keeping tight-lipped on the investigation. On Friday night, UGA police announcing an arrest.
Jose Antonio Ibarra.
In the homicide of 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley.
This was an individual who woke up with bad intentions on that day.
A 26-year-old.
He did not attend school at the University of Georgia.
Who the chief says didn't know Laken, in fact, never met her until Thursday morning.
I think this was a crime of opportunity.
The suspect's apartment, which was searched all day Friday along with several dumpsters and trash cans, backs up to a Coney Forest Park on the UGA campus, where Laken was jogging Thursday morning before she was attacked.
The evidence suggests that this was a solo act.
As to how she was killed,
blunt force trauma.
While an arrest gives the campus some sense of safety, this heinous crime is a reminder evil can show itself anywhere, at any time.
The community was outraged by the crime, not only because of the senseless brutality of it, but because of other details that had come to light. When Jose's background and his criminal history were exposed, the public demanded answers. Jose and his wife had crossed the border illegally from Mexico into El Paso, Texas in September 2022. They were immediately apprehended by Border Patrol, who subsequently charged them, but released them on parole back into the U.S. Venezuelans at this time had protected status by U.S. laws, which allowed them to stay in the country for a period of time, even if they traveled there illegally. This was due to political unrest in Venezuela, which could mean it was unsafe for them to return to their country. Jose Ibarra had filed a claim for asylum, but that claim would take years to process, and in that time he was free to live in the country. The public had also learned that he could have been arrested 2 times previously. While he was living in New York, he was cited driving a moped scooter and delivering Uber Eats with his son on the scooter, both of them wearing no helmets and driving dangerously. Jose was charged with acting in a manner to injure a child, as well as a motor vehicle license violation. The Immigration Department claimed that NYPD had released him before the directive to detain him for immigration violations could be issued. His brother Diego had contacted Jose and convinced him to come and stay at his newly acquired apartment in Athens, Georgia. Jose would take him up on the offer, and both he and Rose would request a humanitarian flight to Georgia. It wasn't long after the brothers were reunited before they were both arrested for shoplifting at Walmart. They were issued citations for the crime, but weren't formally charged. Because no formal charges were laid, this prevented the Immigration Department from being notified of the brothers. And again, they would slip out of custody free to live their lives in the U.S. That would be the second time Jose could and should have been arrested. Protests would be held around Georgia, and with a presidential election coming up, the public urged the government to take action. Thankfully, their voices would be heard, as Republican Mike Collins would introduce new laws that would see any illegal immigrant charged with burglary or theft required to be detained. In a fitting move, the legislation would be named the Laken Riley Bill. Immigrants would hit back at the legislation, calling it unfair and labeling it as controlling. The public would claim that if the proper measures had been taken, Jose Ibarra would have never been free, and the murder would have never happened. Nevertheless, the Laken Riley Bill would pass the House with an incredible vote in favor of it. The first bill that President Trump would pass when he came back into power would be the Laken Riley Bill. Jose would eventually stand trial for the sadistic murder in November 2024. Both the prosecution and defense would agree to a bench trial, meaning there would be no jury, and the judge would decide the outcome of the case. The charges against him were malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, battery, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and peeping Tom. The last charge of peeping Tom would be added after further evidence came to light. Jose Ibarra can be seen on the security footage loitering around the apartment building. He attempts to gain access to a door several times that had a young female student inside. That student had heard the noises while she was in the shower and getting ready for her day. She had called out to ask who was there, but Jose was seen slipping away from the apartment. The encounter scared her so much, she decided to call police.
I was in the shower and then I asked my mom to trying to someone was shouting a big horn. Someone was trying to open the door, and then I said excuse me, and then they just ran away, and then now they're trying to look through my window.
University of Georgia police did attend, but were not able to locate Jose at the time. The white cup he can be seen carrying around with him in the early morning would be discovered in the woods only a short distance away from where Laken's body would be discovered. DNA testing would of course match it to Jose, and further tests would show that the cup contained alcohol.
On February 22nd, Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus. And in his hunt, he encountered 22-year-old Laken Riley on her morning jog. And when Laken Riley refused to be his rape victim, he bashed her skull in with a rock repeatedly. That is what this case is all about.
The prosecution's case was strong. They had all the evidence they needed for a conviction. Cell phone data was matched from Jose's phone to Laken's phone, showing they were both in the same area at the same time. Jose's defense team would argue that his brother Diego could have been using the phone, and there was no proof that it was Jose. However, Diego had been working a shift at the time in food delivery for the university and was able to be excluded as a suspect. As the trial would continue on for 3 days, Jose would show no emotion as the evidence would continue to be presented against him. The 911 call placed by Laken, the body camera footage of police coming across her lifeless body, the testimony from her roommates, none of it drew a single ounce of emotion from Jose. Laken's sister Lauren would deliver an emotional statement on the stand.
I think about how my sister saw exactly what was coming and had no way of preventing it. I think about how scared she must have been and how that man is the only one to truly witness that scene. I'm not sure why he did this to my Laken, and I know I will never understand. I've waited for him to have a reason, but as the details of this case have unfolded, I realize I'll never get any peace or closure. What Jose Ibarra did to my sister is almost unbearable to listen to. I am completely disgusted having to even look and be in the same room as him. That predator is inhumane and is the epitome of evil. I have no doubt in my mind that the monster sitting in this room with us today is the same monster that encountered my precious sister on February 22nd, 2024, where he proceeded to attack, assault, beat, murder, and attempt to rape her. Jose Antonio Ibarra has completely and utterly ruined my life, and I can only hope and pray that he receives a sentence that ruins his. Thank you.
The judge would take a small break before delivering his verdict on the case.
Oftentimes, people use the term closure at an event like this, and I acknowledge that there's no such thing as closure. There will not be closure. With that, Mr. Ibarra, if you will please stand. Count 1. Malice murder, I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole.
Jose Ibarra would receive a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. Strangely, the prosecution had decided not to pursue the death penalty. This would be widely criticized, and senators would even get involved, asking the Attorney General to intervene and seek the death penalty for Jose. However, it appears that won't happen, and instead he will spend the rest of his life in a U.S. prison. This was a truly sickening crime of opportunity, where a beautiful young woman's life was taken away for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. If you found this case compelling, help us out by liking the video and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive into shocking true crime cases. Channel memberships with extended perks, such as members-only videos or early video releases, are also available by hitting the Join button. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.